All right, let's dive right in. Today's book is book number 26. So
Yes,
let's
book 26. Excited on this one. It's one of my favorite authors. His name is Eric Weiner, and this book is called The Socrates Express. It's In Search of Life's Lessons from Dead Philosophers. My reflection title for this one is I Finally Don't Hate Philosophy as Much. So I'm going to share my screen, and I will let you know what I mean by that.
please
So
do.
real quick background on the book. Eric Weiner is a half philosophical writer, half travel writer. I don't even know how else you would describe him as. He can't be three halves, I guess. But he's like a mixture of travel and philosophy and learning and creativity. And he's a great storyteller. So he combines his love of travel and thinking and writing to share these great stories. This particular one was about his best thinking that he says that he does while traveling on trains. So he was traveling around the world on trains, going to spots where famous dead philosophers had lived or where that particular philosophy originated from, and was looking for, points on how to reconnect with what they meant by what they wrote, and how to, maybe take some lessons that he could apply to his own life. And it's just like his musings on life and travel and philosophy and et cetera, et cetera. It's a really interesting book, actually. And I love his writing. Like I said, he and Bill Bryson are just these, like, I don't know what it is about when they write, like, it's just something about it that just captivates me. And honestly, I don't remember a whole lot of what they always say, but they say it so beautifully that it's like, that it feels like you're just like almost like on a cloud of pillows for their entire journey with them. It's just awesome. So the reason why my title of this one is called I Finally Don't Hate Philosophy as Much. As I've told you this many a times in the past, I hate philosophy and philosophers. I just don't get it. It actually just makes my blood boil thinking that there's people out there in this world that actually think that they know what's going on, and that they can somehow distill down the essence of humanity into some, philosophy of how everybody should live their life, and how they think the world should be, and how they think the human behavior is. And I think that's the beauty of humanity, is we don't know, and nobody really knows. And that's why philosophers usually drive me insane, because I don't know, it's just so egotistical, it feels like, and it feels so the opposite of I don't know. It feels like they're saying they do know, and to listen to me, right? And then we build these college courses around, these old dead white dudes that nobody really gives a shit about, like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and Nietzsche and Rousseau, and all these people that you're like, that not only do we like champion them and put them up on this pedestal and talk about them, we build like courses around it, and people study their lives, and it's like, these are just regular dudes, like they're and I think there's a few women that he talks about in this book, but they're no better than anybody else. And it's just annoying that we continue to put them up on this pedestal like they actually know something about life. That's my general thought on philosophy. That
So
said,
you still hate philosophy?
I still hate philosophy a lot, but I don't hate it as much after this book. So thank God for Eric Weiner. What he did was, this whole story was him weaving these people's lives and their philosophies on life into his own life, and how to make these things actionable, and kind of combining and mashing them up all together. And, in this great long story that he took you on as he was traveling through trains and writing about these philosophers. And when he did it that way, I finally started to hear what the philosophers that he was talking about was trying to say. It finally was starting to make sense to me. I've read 5-10 philosopher books, I guess, books from philosophers on this journey, and like, I swear to you, I don't remember a damn thing from any of them. It just sounds like you're just in somebody's head, and they're just droning on and on and on, probably like I am right now, about what they think the world should be. And you're just like, I don't care. There's nothing about this that's going to stick with me, and I don't know how you want me to actually apply any of this to my life. So Eric Weiner made some of this stuff applicable for me, and he mashed up and took little bits and pieces from Rousseau and from Simone Weil and from all these other people, and like a tiny little nugget and then how he wanted to apply to his life and how he thought about that. And it was great, because that's what real thought is mashing up a lot of people's thoughts all together to come up with concepts and new ideas. And that's what I found a little bit of value in this book about. I finally didn't hate philosophy as much. This book also happened to catch me at the very right time. I was at the very end of editing in finishing up my book, I was kind of searching for the epilogue, the ending, a little bit of how I could tie this whole thing together. And I was almost done with the editing process with my editor. And that was when the time that I was reading the Socrates Express. And one of the concepts that he talked about from the Stoics, which ironically, I've read like 3 Stoic books, and I didn't ever catch this in any of those books, probably because, once again, I don't retain anything from these books from the actual philosopher itself. However, one of the concepts that he brought to my attention on this journey was this thing called premeditated adversity that was preached by some of the Stoics like Epicurus and some of the other Stoics. And at the time, it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I had been searching I knew what I was always writing about with the whole concept of I can't imagine, of wanting to share my daughter's story, my family's story with everybody else out there that has the privilege of, and I don't say that like in a mean way, but has the privilege to not have to have gone through the trauma and pain that my family and my daughter and losing my child and what she went through of being born premature, like that sucks. It's awful. It's horrible enemy. But the reason why I wanted to share that story in that book was because of the idea of I can't imagine, and then it all tied together with the concept of premeditated adversity. You listen to these stories about people's trauma and pain, and so you can understand that there are some great lessons that can be unearthed. There's a million great lessons that can be found from the rubble of pain and trauma. And I wanted to share that with people and give them an opportunity to have a premeditated adversity event when they went through the story of my family's life, to be able to say, look, I can't imagine it, but now I at least can, and I can at least see what you went through, what your family went through, what your daughter went through, and I can take some of those nuggets and go apply them back to my own life. And that's what the whole concept of premeditated adversity is all about, is, visualizing like something bad, right? And what would you do if you were in that situation, and how it might affect your life, kind of thing. So I'm thankful that I read this book, and for Eric Weiner for presenting that to me as one of the concepts that he wrote about in his own journey through with Dead Philosophers. And it was something that I hadn't caught, and it really helped me actually when I finished up writing the epilogue. I included that book in there and this concept of premeditated adversity when I was finishing up the epilogue. So it was really helpful for me. And once again, I really enjoyed Eric Weiner's book. So I love the journey. I'll pause there, get your thoughts. What do you think about the concept of philosophers and premeditated adversity?
So I think philosophers, to me, I don't hate philosophy, but I do hate philosopher.
Yes,
if that makes sense.
That does
make
sense.
Because to me, there are, like you say, there are certain lessons and perspectives that philosophy can be applicable to somebody in the right conditions. The reason why I hate philosopher is they trying to push their philosophy onto you without knowing your condition, without saying how, regardless, I don't really care about your condition, your environment. You should take this philosophy, right? So that's why I agree with you. I don't like the philosopher, but I do think the philosophy in some cases are good. And I think, as far as like reading philosophy books, could be a benefit and an advantage. And, like you would say, they don't know shit. I don't know shit. You don't know shit. We don't know shit.
Right.
And that's the way it is with the world. We know just an iota of what the universe is revealing to us. And so for them to say, this is what I think, but you should, do what I say you should do, to me, that's wrong. To say, this is what I think, that's fine. That's good. It's up to the person to take it up and see if it applies to them. And I think I would stop it right there and say, so offer the view, but not to trying to push that view into somebody's, way of thinking or whatnot. So the philosophy in general reminds me of what one of my favorite authors, Tim Taleb, said about the bed of Procrustes.
Just told me this yesterday and I already spaced it because I want to read this book. So say it again.
According to Greek mythology, there is a aristocrat, a businessman.
Hang on, aristocrats, that came from Aristotle, right? How his philosophy on how they should run government and, a small group of smart people. Yes. Like you hear the words aristocrats and democrats, and those came from people and philosophies that, anyway. All right. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. So this rich guy, he has a very unusual and peculiar way of hospitality. So he would kidnap travelers and give them a generous dinner. And after dinner, he would put him into a bed. And what he does is he's trying to make the person fit into the bed. So if you are short, he will stretch you. If you are tall, he will
What?
saw off your legs. So it takes a person, put into the bed he has, and he would chop off the excess or stretch the shortage.
This is
So
a myth, right?
Greek mythology, yes.
Okay, it's a mythology.
Greek
Okay,
mythology.
okay.
But the important lesson here is that
It's not one size fits all.
he's trying to make a perfect fit, but he's changing the wrong variable, because instead of changing the bed, he changed the person.
Right.
So philosophy in general has, similar to this guy, you want to have a solution, but you are trying to change the wrong variable.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't know shit.
Right, right.
You think you
right,
know,
right.
so you change the wrong variable. Just like if I go and I buy a pair of shoe, right, and a little bit too tight. So there's two options. I could say, well, I can take a knife and shave off some of the excess of my foot to make the shoe fit, which is, if you don't know shit, you would do that.
Sure.
But if you know a little bit more, you say, oh, I'm just gonna return and buy new shoes.
Yeah, the hole in the top of the shoe.
And that's a point. That's why I don't like philosophers, is because they're trying to make it fit, but they're changing the wrong variable. So it reminds me of the bed of Procrustes.
I like that. That's very good. I'm glad that you shared that with me. I've never heard that, and it does make a lot of sense, you know.
Yes.
And I think what you said is important too. Like, I don't hate philosophy. Like, as a matter of fact, I mean, if I hated philosophy, I wouldn't be doing the Year of Magical Learning, writing reflections, having this conversation with you. I don't hate conversations and learning and wisdom. Like, that's not what I hate. I hate that we champion that there's some real reason we still think of the word as Socrates and Plato and Aristotle as, like, we hold these guys up to be probably something that they weren't anywhere close to.
Fit, but they saw off somebody's leg, or they chop off someone's head.
Exactly.
To fit into that narrative. Hey, you know, this is the container, you shall fit in it. Versus that make the container fit the person. What's important, right? You don't care what's important.
100%.
You don't care what you know.
Ironically, I feel like I like how he titled it the Socrates Express, because from what I know, I'm actually reading right now. I'm in the process of reading this book called The History of Philosophy by Will Arnett. It's going through like all philosophers throughout history since the inception of philosophy. This is actually interesting because I'm actually learning about the philosophers. And Socrates was obviously one he started with, because a lot of philosophy started with him. The irony of all ironies is Socrates wrote down nothing, and he didn't want to write down anything. It was Plato and other people.
All of Socrates' philosophies is written by his students.
Yeah, Plato, and Plato was
Plato,
the main one.
But Plato is Plato is not really that kind of a true philosopher. He's more of the guy who, to me, is more like a rich boy trying to be a philosopher.
I at least give Socrates some credit of going, he's like, I didn't even know that he may not have said any of this shit. You know what I mean?
Plato could have changed the the wording to his need, because Plato is a playboy of sort that wants to be a philosopher.
But the irony is, if you don't write it down, nobody's going to remember it, you know? So Socrates, if nobody had ever written down Socrates' name and maybe his philosophies that he did teach his students or something like that.
Does it matter whether or not somebody remembers your name, or somebody remembers your name, but because it was something that you say was right, but then somebody wrote it wrong and then have your name attached to it, so you become infamous? Yeah, it remembers your name, but they curses you.
However, it is important not that they remember your name, but it's important that you write it down, because like that's how we, like, then we're no different than dogs, you know, because dogs may have some really wise dogs that travel around in a pack with. Once that dog's dead and nobody passes along that, but
yeah, I get your point.
I'm saying it's only word of mouth at that point in time. And yes, word of mouth works. Like, it's just like, you got to always have somebody that's always passing it down. So language is important. And that's one of our, ways that we build culture, which is one of our superpowers, as we talked about. So I don't want to hate on philosophy. You're right. Like, we're going down a rabbit hole. I don't want to hate on philosophy.
The philosopher and their approach to fitting humanity into their philosopher containers.
Yes.
Because there's only one bed, right? If you happen to be short, you get stretched out. If you happen to be tall, you either get your head chopped off or your leg chopped off. So it's that approach that I don't like.
Agreed.
So there is different container, different bed that might fit you, right? So
I
change
love
out the
it.
bed,
This is why I'm asking you to write your own reflections, because that's the exact reflection that I wanted to write about, Socrates Express, is because he took little bits from all these different people and he turned it into his own. And I was like, oh, that's philosophy to me. Like, that's living your life. That's figuring out how to take knowledge and wisdom from other people and to turn it into something that helps to impact your life and maybe can impact some other people's lives. But at the end of the day, he's not doing it to preach to somebody. He's just doing it to say, like, oh, I get it. And when he pulled it all together, like, for me, there was a few concepts that I was like, oh, I didn't realize that the Stoics talked about that. Or, oh, I didn't realize that Simone Weil did this. Or, I didn't realize the value of walking for Rousseau and why I should, go out there and, you know what I mean? Like, it was like,
yeah,
okay,
I mean, you have to document your life, and doing this is one of the way I document things. I'm not the traditional documenter in terms of taking a pen and put words into it, but putting me on video, it's another way I do it.
fair enough. To each their own. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna bed of Procustus you into how you share your thoughts with the world. So share away however you want to. I value your thoughts. How about that? That's all right. So I know we're running out of, we went a little long in the first half of that, but I'd love to get your thoughts on the concept of premeditated adversity as well.
Right. Because the thing is, we don't know shit, right? We need as much help as we could to imagine your adversity or someone's adversity is basically looking through their own eyes and having their view. If someone has a hammer, everything tends to look like a nail to them. So they have a frame of reference, the way, their own perspective, because they have a certain foundations. And, you trying to make sense of things. And without a different lens or goggles looking through, you're going to see everything as whatever, which is, if you have a hammer, everything is an nail to you. And so looking through imagining someone's life from their perspective, give you a different point of reference.
The best way to do that is by reading books.
Exactly.
Or reading other people's stories.
And philosophy as well. Philosophy is still good. You just imagine it. Just because, let's say you have, Einstein's, his law of relativity, right? Yeah. The way that he conducts the experiment is you have a lightning that hits the front of the train and the back of the train while the train is moving at the same time, right? To the guy that sits in the middle, his frame of reference for that lightning is different, because for him, right, the lightning comes to the front first and then in the back because the train is moving. So the signals of the lightning comes to him faster, right? So that he hears boom, boom. But to the guy who stands off of the train and watching the train go by, he saw the lightning hit the train at the same time. That's different perspective that the guy on the train could never have seen, only if he only looks at his perspective. But he includes his perspective and other people's perspective as well. And when the guy told him, yeah, the lightning is so peculiar, it hits at the same time, then he's not going to say, well, no, I hear boom, boom, I hear it too distinct. So you're lying to me, right. But in reality, they're both right. Yeah. He is right from his perspective, and the guy standing off of the train, watching him go by, is also right, because they hit the train and they see it at the same time from that perspective. But only when you can see through those different perspectives that you are able to appreciate the unknown, uncertainty, and not to be so certain about what you've seen. Right? Yeah. So you're more diverse, you're more versatile in your dealings with the unknowns, the uncertainty of your life.
Agreed.
So you become like when you have the premeditated adversity, you're getting tougher, you're getting wiser, because you have gone through that from someone's perspective without having to endure yourself. Because I don't know if a human can endure too many of that.
No, it sucks. Actually, one of my monthly challenges that I did, I want to say maybe 6 months ago, was I tried to spend 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes a day, picking a scenario of somebody else's life and just imagining what that would be like if that was my life, and doing some premeditated adversity. And truth be told, like, I don't remember much from that, but what I do remember a lot from is when I immersed myself in, 18 hours into a book about endurance, like John Shackelford's Team's Great Voyage, or Andre Agassi's life, being
Mhm.
basically abused by his father growing up as a tennis player and having to figure out his own life later on down the road, and kind of hitting rock bottom. Like it's stories like that you literally can go, I can't imagine, but I get to spend all this time imagining and learning and building up my memory bank, doing 10 minutes a day of premeditated adversity doesn't do that for me. Maybe I'm not good enough at it yet, but if back to the book that I wrote again, that's everybody that reads that book, that has finished it, that has talked to me about it afterwards, they're like, I get it. They're like, I know what you felt. I know how you felt. I know they don't
Mhm.
know it as well as I know, but they're like, I appreciate you sharing the story because I have more gratitude for my family at the end of the day. I've told my wife, I love her afterwards or whatever. I hug my kids, or it brings that sense that you don't have to go through it and you shouldn't have to go through it. But the concept of premeditated adversity is powerful because there's a lot of lessons that you can learn from,
Right. Right.
some of the worst things you can
Yeah.
imagine,
It
Yeah.
stretches your boundaries of your certainty circles,
Right.
but at the same time, going through the actual adversity, it's not something that most people can take. Many of those.
Wish it upon my worst enemy.
Yeah.
Losing I don't
Yeah.
care. Yeah. No, you can take every lesson that I've learned from that and take it back and 0.00001 second flat. You know what I mean? I don't care. If that means I get to have my daughter here with me,
Yeah.
by all, there's not even a thought in my head, around
Right.
that stuff. But to your point, it's
Right. But it's
nobody wishes for that
it's
stuff.
good. It's good that because it already happened, might as well learn something from it and share with people so people can also learn a little
Yeah.
bit of it.
Exactly. And if my daughter can inspire them the way that she inspired me, that's
Mhm.
that's everything for me. That's
Right.
my life. That's my mission.
Right.
That's my
Exactly.
purpose in this world. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, it was an interesting book and it made me think a lot. And I appreciate Eric Weiner's writing a lot. And yeah, I hope. Oh, we didn't even ask the question. But what lessons might you learn from imagining someone else's life? And that's something we can leave the readers with today. And
Right.
it's
And whether or not they like philosopher.
what's that?
Whether they like philosophers.
That is true. However, we do not claim to be that we do not have a single arching philosophy. Our philosophy is we don't know anything. So that you can't have a philosophy around you don't know anything, right?
Our philosophy is take what works for you and leave what doesn't.
That's true. 100%. A good discussion for the day. Looking forward to one tomorrow, and
Yeah,
we'll see
you
everybody
next
soon.
time. Okay.